starting on the bottom of Gimel Amud Beis, where it says Uplige de Ula. The Gemara here is discussing the expression that it said in the Mishnah, Mishnita Laden. When the Aron was removed, taken away, so then there was only the Evan Shasiya on the Beis HaMikdash and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So the Gemara brought a machlokes whether the Aron was taka removed and taken to Bavel and to Galus, or rather Mishnignas. It wasn't removed, but it was hidden under the Beis HaMikdash. Mm-hmm. So it brought a machlokes here between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai on one hand, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish on the other hand. So it said that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai held that the Aron was taken into Galus, like Rabbi Elazar. Here the Gemara brings that Ula said from the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai that it was not taken into Galus. So Pligid Ula, so what we said before in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai argues on what Ula said. Ula said, Shal Masya ben Choresh is Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai beroimi, Rabbi Masya ben Choresh that lived in Rome. So he asked Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, when Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai came to visit him in Rome, he said as follows: Rabbi Eliezer melamdeinu pam rishayno shniya. Rabbi Eliezer teaches us once and a second time from two different psukim that Aron galal Bavel, that the Aron was exiled into Bavel. And the Gemara brings the two psukim, rishayno hadam Aron. The first pasuk is this that we said, Vayiviyayu Bavela im Kli Chemdas Beis Hashem. They came to Bavel with the precious keli of the Eibishter, which refers to the Aron. Shnia, another pasuk, Maihi, the Chsiv, the pasuk says, Vayetzim Ibasiyon Kol Hadara. From Tzion came out all of its Hadara, all of its beauty. But we Darshans, my Kol Hadara, Chadara, refers to the keli that's inside the room in Chadre Chadarim, as Rashi says, over there in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So those are the two psukim where you see that the Aron was brought to Bavel. So Rav Masya Mecharesh said to Rav Shimon Yochai, that you say that it was hidden here in the Beis HaMikdash. Ma Taimer, what do you say? What's your source? Omaloi. So Rav Shimon Yochai answered him, Shani Aimer, I say, Aron b'mekayme nignas, the Aron was hidden here in the Beis HaMikdash, Shanema, because the pasuk says, Vayarichu abadim v'gaymer. And what does it say in the conclusion of that pasuk? We learned it yesterday, and the Gemara here is going to bring it. That Vayiyu Sham Ada Yoma Zeh. The Aron remained there until today. So from here you see that it stayed there. So Ula is reporting Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's opinion differently than we said before. He held that it was hidden there in the Beis HaMikdash. Now my mashma, the Gemara asks, what's the source from this pasuk to say that the Aron was hidden there? Chsiv, is it because it says Vayiyu Sham Ada Yoma Zeh, that it remains there until today? But is that a good proof? Anytime it says in the pasuk that means that it's there till today, that it's forever there. And the Gemara brings a source from another pasuk where we see that that's not necessarily the case. It says in the pasuk, Yevusi Yeshiv Yerushalayim, Yevusi that was living in Yerushalayim, Lo Yairishu B'nei Binyamin. So the children of Binyamin were not able to expel them from Yerushalayim. Vayeshev Vayevusi as Bnei Binyamin Yerushalayim, and they lived together with the Bnei Binyamin in Yerushalayim ad hayom hazeh, until today. So it says in this pasuk until today. Now does that actually mean that the Bnei Binyamin and the Yevusi remained in Yerushalayim until today? Hachinami delei galu. Could it be that they didn't go into Galus and they were not out of Yerushalayim, expelled from Yerushalayim? But it says in the Braise, Rabbi Yehuda said, Chamishim Ishtayim Shana, for 52 years, Le'ovar Ish Bi Yehuda, a person did not come into Yehuda, in Eretz Yisrael. Shenemar Ala Orem Esa B'chi, the mountains, I cry, Nihi al Novas Midbar, and Nihi means he's also crying and weeping and wailing for the beauty of the Midbar of Eretz Yisrael. Kina, and your lamentation, kinitzasu, they burnt, they made a fire in Eretz Yisrael. There was no person that passed through there. And there's no sound of any cattle. And no birds there. And also even the animals nadadu holchu. They moved away and went from Eretz Yisrael. So Eretz Yisrael became a desolate place. And the Gemara Darshant, when it says behema on the end of the pasuk, it already said before mikna. Why does it say again behema? Behema begematria chamishim shtayim hava. The word behema is the gematria of 52, and that hints to the fact that for 52 years Eretz Yisrael was destroyed and there was no one that came there. Tanya, and another brayse it says Rabbi Yossi said Sheva Shonim Niskaima, for 7 years it was fulfilled. This that it says in another pasuk, Gofris v'melach Be'eretz Yisrael. Brimstone and salt all over Eretz Yisrael. Not only was it empty, but it was gofris and melach for 7 years. How do we know 7 years? My time with Rabbi Yaisi. What's the source that it's 7 years? Because Asya bris bris. He learns out the words of bris. It says over here that David will intensify the bris that he made, and it speaks about the destruction of Eretz Yisrael. So what is this bris? So in the Teichach it says Va'amru al azvu as bris Hashem l'keya v'isam, and there the Eibusher says Gofris Melech will bring on Eretz Yisrael, and that happened for 7 years. So the point is, from both of these braises you see that the Eden were expelled from Eretz Yisrael, and for sure from Yerushalayim, and it was completely empty. So how could you say that when it says that the Bnei Binyamin with the Yevusi, they lived in Yerushalayim ad hayom hazeh, if we see that it ad hayom hazeh does not mean forever? So the same thing b'negeh to the Aron. When it says by the Aron ad hayom hazeh, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was there forever. So the one answers is a difference. Amalei hochaksiv sham. By the Aron it says that it was there ad hayom hazeh. By you sham ad hayom hazeh. Hasam, but by the Bnei Binyamin and the Yevusi, it does not say sham. Like Siv Sham. So when it says Ad Hayom Hazeh, it doesn't necessarily mean Sham in that location. So therefore there's no comparison of the two expressions. But the Gemara doesn't accept this either. If it says Vayihi Sham Ad Hayom Hazeh, that means that they remain there forever. I'll ask you a question from another place. It says in the Pasuk, Umehem Mibnei Shimon Holchu Lahar Seir. So from the Bnei Shimon they went to the mountain of Seir, where Esav is, where the descendants of Esav are. Anoshim Chamesh Meis, 500 men, and they had their generals that went Platya, Naria, Rafia, Oziel, Bnei Yishi, Beroisham, Vayaku, Esheris Apletela Amalek, and they went to fight against the leftovers of Amalek. And then it says in the pasuk, Vayeshu Sham Ad Hayom Hazeh, and from the Bnei Shimon they remained there until today. So is that true? They remained there and by Har Seir until today. But we know that Allah Sancherev Melech Ashur or Bilbul Kol Haratzis, Sancherev, the king of Ashur, when he came and brought the wars in the world, he came and spread around everybody, all the people in all different countries, he spread them around, and they didn't remain there. Shanema, it says in the pasuk, Va'asik Vulis Amim, I'll remove the borders of all nations, Vasu the same, Shaisti. And then he says that he's going to take all the treasures and use them for himself and steal them. Point is that he says that he's going to remove all the nations from their countries, so they should all become subservient to him. So how can we say that the Bnei Shimon remained there ad hayom hazeh? And he uses the term sham, and still we see that it's not literal that they remained there until today. So you can't say by the Aron that it says that it would remain there until today, that it means literally. There's no raya. Yufte, this refutes what Ula reported in the name of Rab Shimon ben Yochai, that he brought a raya from this pasuk. Doesn't necessarily refute that Rab Shimon ben Yochai said this, but the source from this pasuk is definitely not the source. We learned in the Braisa a third opinion, third opinion regarding where the Aron is. The Chachamim say that the Aron was hidden in the Beis HaMikdash, but not under the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Where was it hidden? It was hidden under the chamber where the wood was kept. And the Gemara brings a story. We learned this in Masechta Shkolim. So he said, we learned this as well, that's where it was hidden in a Mishnah in Shkolim. It says there as follows: there was an incident with a Kayin. Shahaya Misasik. He was there in that chamber, and Rashi says Misasik means that he was playing around. He was just, I'm not acting with the proper respect there. So he saw on the floor a tile that was different than the rest of the tiles, that it was a little bit raised, and he saw that something that must be under there. He came and told his friend about it, and said, let's go see what's there. He didn't complete to be able to show him it until Abisha took away his life. Now, when they saw that happen, then they knew definitely Shisham Aron Ganas. It must be that the Aron was concealed there under that tile. Therefore, the Eibishter did not want him to go and to see it.
When was that? After?
This is in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash.
Oh, okay.
When it was concealed already. My hava of it. What exactly was this Kayin doing there inside this room? Rab Chelbait said, Misasek bekardumoi hoya. He was busy with his axe. When they used to cut the wood, prepare it for the karbanis, they would take out the worms and so on. But again, as Rashi says, he was playing around. He wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, Shnei Kainim Bali Mumin, there was always two Kainim that had a mum, and they couldn't do the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, so Hoyim Asliim Beitzim, they would take out the worms of the wood to be able to be used for the karbanis. And what happened to this kain is, the axe of one of them fell out of his hand, and it fell on that spot where the arem was hidden under it, and fire came out, and it consumed him, it burned him. So here, this is another opinion which says that the arem was buried and concealed over there in that place. Regarding the Arayin, when it was in the Beis HaMikdash and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So Rav Yehuda asked the following contradiction in what it says in the Psukim. In one pasuk it says, Vayiru Roshei Abadim, that the tips of the poles of the Arayin are seen, are exposed. But in another pasuk it says, that you can't see them outside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So what does this mean? The meaning of these two psukim are nidin ve'ein nidin. It's seen, but it's not seen. As the Gemara is soon going to explain, that the poles were protruding, they stuck into the peroiches, and you saw the shape of those poles there, but the actual poles did not stick out. Tanya Namiyachi, we learned this pshat as well in a Braisa, where it says, Vayiro Roshi Abadim. So, according to this pasuk, I would think, Yachal Lehiu Zazim Mimekaiman. So I would think that these badim are not going to be moved from their position that they're in the Aring. Right? So now the point that the Gemara is saying is, how long were these poles of the Aring? They were 10 amas long. If they were 10 amas long, how large was the Kodesh HaKadoshim? It was also 10 amas. So therefore there's no reason that these poles should be sticking into the Pereiches. It's large enough to be able to stay there without sticking into the Pereiches. So, if so, you wouldn't see anything of these poles sticking out. So it says in the pasuk Vayarichu Abadim that the badim were long enough that it was sticking into the pereiches. In other words, they weren't exactly in their regular position. They were protruding. They were moved to go into the pereiches to stick out. Now, I would think that these badim actually sort of punctured a hole in the pereiches and they were sticking out on the pereiches, and you could see them outside. So therefore, the other pasuk it says no, they were sticking into the pereiches, but it didn't make a hole, it didn't go out. Okay, so then how was it? It was sticking. The two badim were sticking out in the pereiches. It was sticking out the way it is by a woman with the breasts that are sticking out from under her garments. So over here also it was covered. There's a pasuk that says in Shir Hashirim, Tzroir Amir Daidi, the besamim and the aroma of my beloved, Li Bein Shadai Yolim, between the breasts he lies, which refers,
away from the 10 amas and 20 amas for the pereiches.
Yeah.
So that means it sticks about even more than 10 amas.
Okay. So it was moved and it was sticking out, and this is an indication of the love of the Eibishter for the Yidden, as we'll see over here. Amar Rav Ketina said, "B'shah shahay Yisrael oilun l'regel." When the Yidden came to the Beis HaMikdash and the oil regel, megalalin lehemes hapereiches, they would fold over, they would open up the pereiches of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Umarin lahem esakruvim. They would show the Yidden the kruvim in the Beis HaMikdash. Shahayu mu'urin zeh b'zeh. And these kruvim were hugging, embracing one another. And then they would tell the Yidden, Ru'u chibaschem lifnei amakim, see the love that the Eibishter has for you, ki chiba zachar nekeva, like the love of a zachar nekeva. That's what happened. Now, when exactly this happened? 1 second. There's a lot of questions on this. I know. I'll explain. So when exactly this happened in the first or second Beis HaMikdash, the Gemara will explain. And how exactly are they allowed to open up the pereiches? There's also a big question on this. The Gemara asks one question. Let's see.
And there's no pereiches.
1 second. Well, the Gemara is going to address this. So Rav Chisda asked the question, but doesn't it say when the Yidden were traveling in the Midbar? So who took the kalim of the Mishkan from one location to another? The Levium, right? But then it says, V'lo yavoyu, the Levium should not come there, lirais, to see the kalim, and the Arayin, kevala es HaKodesh. When you're covering, Vala means when you're covering the Arayin, the Levium are not there. Who's the one that covered the kalim? Before they carry them from one place to another, the Kayanim came in, covered them. After it was covered, then the Levium came in and carried them. So if, when the Yidden are traveling in the Midbar, the Kayanim have to first come and cover them, and then the Levium could come and take it, for sure over here in the Beis HaMikdash, they shouldn't be allowed to uncover the Pereiches for the Yidden to come and see it. That's the Gemara's question. The Gemara is going to give an answer to this, but the Mefarshim ask, Why doesn't the Gemara ask a stronger question? There's a Meferish Mishnah, we had this before, that says that you're not allowed to look inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. You're not allowed to have hana of seeing the place inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So how could they open up the Kodesh HaKadoshim for the Yidden to look inside and see the Arayin inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim? The Gemara doesn't ask that question for some reason. Okay, besides that, there's another question that the Mefarshim ask. How are they allowed to go inside and open up the Pareiches? You're not allowed to go inside the Beis HaMikdash just for no reason. This is what we learned yesterday about a Bi'er Ekonis. When you come in and you have no karbanis to bring stam, to come in, to open it up, to show all the Yidden what's going on. How are you allowed to do that? So that the Mefarshim answer that it must be that they went inside to bring, let's say, the Ketayres or to light the Menorah. They went in for a purpose, not for no reason. Then once they were inside, they folded over the Pareiches for the Yidden to be able to see the Kruvim. But the Gemara answers this question that we asked over here. First this is a continuation of the question. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, B'shas achnosas kelim lenartik shalahem. This pasuk refers to when Yidden were traveling, that first the kelim were put into their nartik, sort of in a holder, that they had like this cover for the aron and all the kelim, and then the Leviim were able to come and take it to travel. But before that, they weren't allowed to be there. So how over here are you able to unfold the Pareiches for the Yidden to come and see the Kruvim? So the answer is, Amar Rav Nachman, Mashal Lekala. This is compared to a Kala. Kol Zman Shi Beveis Aviyah, when the Kala is only in the first stage of her marriage, Edison, and she's still living by her father. So Tsnua Mibaila, she's still modest, she's still embarrassed of her husband. But then, Kivin Shabasa Lebeis Chamiyah, once she's fully married, and then she goes and she joins the family in her father-in-law's house, Einat Tsnua Mibaila. So then, there's no tznias, she doesn't feel embarrassed of her husband. So this is a mashal over here for this as well. When the Yidden were in the Midbar, so the marriage of the Eibishter and the Yidden was incomplete. So therefore, the Yidden don't have that openness and that friendliness, kaviyachol, with the Eibishter, and therefore they can't come and see the Aron and the Kalim when they're traveling. But once they're in the Beis HaMikdash, so then the marriage of the Eibishter and the Yidden is complete. So therefore the Yidden are able to come and see the Kruvim. But the Gemara asks on this, Masav Rav Chana bar Rav Ketine, the story that we had before. What is the story we had? There was the story with this Kayin, and he saw over there this place, and he wanted to show someone the Aron that was there. He wanted to open it up, and what happened? Before he had a chance, the Eibishter killed him. A fire came and burnt him. But if you're saying that once the Yidden on the Beis HaMikdash, they're allowed to see the Aron and the Kruvim, so why did a fire come and burn him? So he answers him, no, that was in the second Beis HaMikdash. This Garsha Kamret, you're talking about the second Beis HaMikdash, which is after the Churban, when the Yidden were divorced from the Eibishter Kaviyachol. And even after the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, but it was after following a divorce. This Garsha, once Yidden were divorced, Chazru l'chibasa rishayna. They go back to the status of the love that there was when the Yidden were in the Midbar, when they're not fully married yet, and therefore even after the Beis HaMikdash was rebuilt, the second Beis HaMikdash, they're not allowed to see the Aron anymore. So that's the pshat in this. Therefore it's not a stira to this story. But now the Gemara goes back to the story itself. When did this happen? What are we talking about? Are we talking about in the first Beis HaMikdash, and you're going to say that then the Yidden were shown the Aron? And it has to be the first Beis HaMikdash, because that's the only time when the Aron was there. But mi avoy pareiches. Was there a pareiches there? Wasn't there a wall that was separating the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim? Where was there any pareiches? Ela b'mikdash sheni. So if we're talking about a pareiches, this must be in the second Beis HaMikdash. But if it's the second Beis HaMikdash, mi ava kruvim? Are there any kruvim there? The Aron was hidden. Either it was hidden, or the Aron was taken to Bavel, but there was no Aron in the Beis HaMikdash and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So how can it say they showed them the kruvim? So the Gemara answers, La'olam b'mikdash rishon. It's referring to the first Beis HaMikdash. My pareiches, when it says there was a pareiches, in addition to the wall that was there, there was also a pareiches. Pareiches the Bavi. There was a pareiches by all the gates, by all the entrances, from the Azara, and in the Beis HaMikdash itself, there were many different curtains. There were 13 pareiches, 13 curtains in the Beis HaMikdash. Shiva, 7 of these curtains, connected Shiva Sha'arim, corresponding to the 7 gates that there were outside entering through the Azara. Shtayim, another 2, Achas Lepischa Shel Heichal, 1 for the entrance of the Heichal, Achas Lepischa Shel Ulam, 1 for the entrance of the Ulam. And then Shtayim, there were another 2, B'Dvir, by the Dvir, which is the separation between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So besides the wall that was there was also a Pareiches. And then Shtayim Kenegdon Ba'aliyah. There was a second floor on top of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and there as well there was another 2 Pereichesim that were hanging there. So therefore there were 13 Pereichesim besides the wall, and when it says that they removed the Pereiches, it's referring to this Pereiches between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim that they removed, and there was an opening in the wall that they were able to see the Aron. The wall wasn't complete. If it was complete, he would never be able to walk into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So there was a Pereiches there, even in the first Beis HaMikdash, and there they removed it in the first Beis HaMikdash. That's one shot. A second shot here is Loilam b'Mikdash Sheni. We're talking about the second Beis HaMikdash. And when we say that the Yidden were able to see the Kruvim of the Aron, it doesn't mean the Kruvim of the actual Aron. Kruvim the Tzurasa Havakaimi. There was Kruvim of the forms of Kruvim that were made as pictures on the walls in the Beis HaMikdash. There's a pasuk that says, "That's called Kires Habayis," and the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. This is the first Beis HaMikdash even. So it says regarding Shlomo HaMelech, Meisiv, Kela, Kruvim, Kola. Pasuk over here is brought a little bit out of order. Pituche Maklois Kruvim, that's what's supposed to be added over here. So there was the pictures of Kruvim, the Timrois, and the trees, palm trees, Peturei Tzitzim, and pictures of flowers, the Tzipazov, and it was covered with gold, Meishar, Ala Mechuka. There was an engraving of gold on it, Oksiv, and then it also says in the pasuk, Kamar Ish Ulavoyes, that these Kruvim, the pictures of the Kruvim that were on the wall, was like a person that's embracing his companion. And which Gemara will explain. But the point is that you see from this pasuk here that in the Beis HaMikdash, even when there was no Aron there in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, there was these pictures and gold engravings of Kruvim down the wall. And that's what it's referring to, that they showed the Yidden, they removed the Pereiches to show the Yidden these pictures. And the Gemara explains, "My kamar ishel avayes." What does this mean? Omer Rabbe Bar Rav Shila. Rabbe Bar Rav Shila says, "Ki ish hamuore b'levaye shalai." Like a person that's embracing his companion, like Rashi brings here, the chibuk ish and ishtai. So this is the picture of the kruvim that there were on the walls of the Beis Hamikdash. That's what it's referring to. There's a long taisvis here, if you see, that discusses. If you look in the beginning of the taisvis, it's interesting. Nishalti alaisam shemitzayim b'machzayim. Tzuras Chayes V'Oifis and Yafa Oisim in Lav. Taisus asks if when the printers in his times began making pictures of animals and birds in the Machzairim, in the Sidurim and the Machzairim, is it okay to make these pictures inside the Sidurim? So Taisus says that it's not appropriate. Lo Yafa Oisim. It's not good because then people daven, they're looking at these pictures and they're not looking into the Siddur and they're not having kavanah for their davening. Okay, so there's a whole long discussion there in Taisus about this, a lot of different details. Okay. Yeah, also true, correct. In the Beis Hamikdash there were pictures on the wall. Yeah. Amar Reish Lakish, regarding this, Reish Lakish says, B'shah shenichnasu nachrim laheichal. When the Goyim came into the Beis Hamikdash, Ro kruvim amurim zeh b'zeh, they saw these kruvim that are embracing one another, the Zohar and the Nekeva that are embracing one another. So there's actually a machlokes about this, what exactly this is talking about. Some say this is talking in the first Beis Hamikdash, and they saw the actual Aron in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, according to the opinion that the Aron was not hidden by Yoshiyahu HaMelech in advance, according to the opinion that the Aron was taken into Galus, so the Goyim found the Aron in the Beis HaMikdash, and they saw the Aron and the Kruvim that were embracing one another. That's one opinion. And according to Rashi, though, it's mashma that the pshat on the Gemara here is they didn't see the actual Aron because the Aron was hidden, or this Gemara is talking about the second Beis Hamikdash where there was no Aron. What they saw was the pictures of the golden engravings in the wall of the Kruvim that are embracing one another. That's what they saw. So what did the Goyim do? I'd see in Lashok. They took it out to the marketplace, and V'amru they said, Yisrael alol, these Yidden shebrachasam bracha. Their blessing is a blessing. And when they curse you, they have also the kayach of cursing. Like it says, Vavarcham bevarachecham kalel cha'or. That's the source for that. So the Yidden are so powerful, but look what they're doing. Yasku b'dvarim alalu. The Yidden are busy with such kind of things. This is the pictures in their Beis Hamikdash, or this is the Kruvim in the Beis Hamikdash. Miyad hizilum. This brought a disgrace to Yidden. Shenemar ki mechabdeha hizilua. All those that brought honor to Yidden over here were embarrassing Yidden. Kiro ervasa. They saw this picture over here, or these Kruvim, and that was what happened at the time of the Churban. So there's the question that the Marsha here asks in the Gemara, and all the Rishonim speak about this as well, that the Gemara before is saying that this embracing of the Kruvim is actually a sign of the love of the Eibishter Yidden. There's another Gemara that says that the Kruvim, that was one of the miracles in the Beis HaMikdash was that these Kruvim were only embracing each other in the time when Oysen Ritzayin Shel Makim. But when Yidden were not doing the mitzvahs properly, so then the Kruvim were not embracing each other. They separated. So at the time of the Churban, how did they find these Kruvim embracing one another? Mm-hmm. And according to the Pshat, that it refers to the Kruvim that are on the walls, the pictures, the same ness happened to the pictures. That when the Yidden were doing the Ratzon of the Eibishter, they embraced one another, and when not, they separated. So how could we say that they were embracing one another at the time of the Churban? So there's a Maimer from the Rebbe, Balayla Hu Tov Shemem Daled, where the Rebbe explains that from here is a raya that at the time of the Churban, even though B'chitzonius and B'goloi, it shows on the separation of the Eibishter from Yidden, but nevertheless, B'pnimius, there's a tremendous love and there's a tremendous connection that comes about at that time. And the Rebbe says that another example for this, or another raya for this, is the expression that it says regarding Golus, that is compared to Shina. Ani Yishena V'Libiyeh. When Yidden go into Golus, it's like the connection of the Yidden and the Eibishter is put to sleep. What happens when a person goes to sleep? The Goloi, B'chitzayni, so look at the person, his functions are removed of him. He can't function because he's asleep. But what really happens to the neshama? It goes up Lamaila to the source. There's a deeper connection. The neshama is drawing life from a higher place. And that's what really happens at the time of the Churban. The connection of Klal Yisrael to the Eibishter externally is much less. But the Pnimius and in the Shaidish, it becomes even stronger. And that was, you see this here in the fact that the Kruvim were embracing one another at the time of the Churban. It said in the Mishnah that in the second Beis HaMikdash, there was the rock there in the Beis HaMikdash, which is called Shesiya. What does the word Shesiya mean? Tana, we learned in the Braisa, Shemimena Hushsas Ha'olam. From here, the entire world was created. From this rock. It started from this rock, and from there it was all created. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Tanan, we learned here in this Mishnah, Kamanda Omar, according to the opinion that we have in a Braisa, that it says, Mitziyain Nivra Olam, that the entire world was created from Tzion, from Yerushalayim, and over here from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, from the place where this rock is. Which is now, there's a few opinions how exactly the world was created. Tanya and Abraisa we learned. Rabbi Eliezer says, Olam, the world, me'emtza isay nivra. It was created from the center. In other words, the Eibishter first created the center, and then from the center, the Eibishter attached more pieces of earth and the clobs of earth, and it went out extended outward from the center. Shenema, like we see in the pasuk, it says, "Betzekes afar lamutzak." The Eibishter poured the earth into the foundation, and agavim yuduvku, and then the pieces of earth were attached to there, and it extended outward. Rabbi Shua says no. The world was created in the opposite way. Olam min hatzdadin nivra. The world was created from the four sides of the world, and from outside in. It was created and it extended inward. Shenema, the pasuk says, Kila sheleg yomer havi oret. The Eibishter says to the snow to come to the earth. The geshem motar, and the rain, and the geshem mitreis uzay should come down into the earth. So Rashi says that these different expressions of rain that the pasuk speaks about the rain that the Eibishter brought on the four different sides of the world, and from there the world began developing from all of its sides, and it extended inward from outside in.
There's no sides in the circle.
True. Okay, you're right. So it's not a square. Okay, sorry. So from the four, whatever, from the different sides of the world. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Even Yora Kadosh Baruch Hu B'Yam. The Eibishter threw a rock into the water, and Mimenu Nishsa Sa'idon. From there the world was created. Shenemat says in the pasuk, Alma Adonea Hotbu. So the foundation of the world that was submerged into the water. Oy Miyara Evan Pinosa. Who placed down over there the rock, which is the foundation of the world. So the worlds began being created from a rock that was thrown into the water. Now comes the final opinion, which is the opinion of our Tan and the Mishnah, that the world is created from Tzion. The world is created from Tzion, from the Evan Shesiya in the Beis HaMikdash. Shenema, the pasuk says, Mizmer la'asav keila l'kim Hashem, and there in that Mizmer it says, Va'omer mitzion mechlal yoifi. From Tzion came the beauty of the world. Mimenu muchlal yoifi. From Tzion came all of the beauty of creation. Yofya shalaylam, the beauty of creation of the world. Tanya, we learned in Abraisa, Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol says, when it says in the pasuk, Eile toildes hashamayim v'ha'aretz bihi bottom. This is the derivatives that come from heaven and from earth. Yoma saysavai lekim eretz v'shamayim. David created heaven and earth. Toildes shamayim mishamayim nivru. So everything that exists in shamayim was created from shamayim. And toildes ha'aretz mi'aretz nivru. Everything that exists here in this world and aretz, all the derivatives, everything that's in the world here below comes from the aretz. That's the first opinion of Eliezer Gadol. But Chachamim, the same Chachamim before that said that everything's created from Tzion, they say not only everything here in the earth below is created from Tzion, but even in Shamayim as well. Elu ve'elu, everything in Aretz and everything in Shamayim, Mitzion Nivru, comes from Yerushalayim, from the center of the world, from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Shenema mizmul asav keil akim Hashem diba v'yikra Aretz. And then what does the pasuk say? Mi mizrach shemesh ad mevoyai, from where the sun comes and shines up from the east. Even from in other words, even from Shemayim. And Vayim, the pasuk says, Mitziyim mechlal yofi lekim ifia, and that means mimenu, from the Beis Hamikdash, from the place in Tzion, mochlal yofi shel olam, is created all the beauty in the world, including also everything that exists in the heavens, the sun and the moon and all the stars. Everything in the world is created from Tzion, from the center of the world, from Yerushalayim. Okay.